Welcome to the One of 20 podcast. Today, I have Whitney here with me today. She has two children with Inet, and it is a rare disease like mine, and there are less than 150 people in the world who have it. And welcome, Whitney.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's just dive right into it. So can you kind of walk me through what Inet is, like the symptoms, how you came to a diagnosis, like your day to day, just like the general basis of Inet?
Well, Inet is called infantile neuroaxonal dystrophy. You have two parts to your nerves, the neurons and the axons. And this disease allows these membranes to form over the axons, which blocks the signals from your brain to the parts of your body. And so it's sort of like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, where their body stops working the way that they want it to. They stop having control over their body, but it also has a iron in the brain accumulation component, which kind of short circuits the brain, sort of like Alzheimer's, where they get dementia. So even though their body isn't working like it's supposed to, they're not really aware of what's happening. So kind of grateful for that part, I guess. Um, and the first symptoms are bad balance. Riley started falling over a lot when she was about 1.5, and we took her to the doctor and they thought she had autism. So they just kind of patted me on the head and they were like, well, she'll walk when she wants to walk. And I'm like, she can't even sit up because she falls over all the time. So we ended up going to Vanderbilt about, I don't know, a year later. And it took us about 2 years to get a diagnosis, which we found out was genetic. So we had our son tested. And before he even had symptoms, we knew that he had this disease.
Wow, that must have been a lot. I can imagine like getting one diagnosis and being like, oh my God, like you think it's this, but like in your heart, it's something different, it's more. And I think that's a lot of frustration with people, especially in the rare community, is that the doctors, I don't want to say they necessarily brush it off, but they kind of just say, oh, it's just this, or oh, it's just that. There are a lot of doctors out there who will go the extra mile, but the ones
Mhm.
who kind of just brush it off say, oh, like it's just like a surface level, like don't even worry about it, like you'll get better, you'll get fine, but there's more, there's more answers, there's something deeper. And I think that is just, it's so frustrating. And just going off of that, when you finally got the diagnosis, you got both of your children tested, how did you adjust to living with having two children with this genetic disorder?
Well, it was kind of gradual because the kids, they started out developing typically, meeting milestones, walking, talking, feeding themselves. And then they slowly started to regress and lose the abilities that they once had. So as they began to lose their milestones, we just kind of adapted every time something happened. So Riley wasn't able to sit up. So we started putting pillows on either side of her so she could, just kind of have bumpers, I guess. Then when she started to lose head control. So her head started to droop. So we started putting a pillow behind her neck so that it kind of like helped support that. Then when they stopped being able to swallow properly, we went from solid foods like macaroni and cheese and hot dogs and broccoli to pureed baby foods. So we kind of stepped back a little bit on that. And then when Riley lost, I think 4 pounds in a month, they said, we need to do something or she's going to die. So we ended up having to get an emergency G-tube surgery for her, which she then bounced back so fast. It's amazing what nutrition will do for your body. So she ended up regaining strength from the G-tube feeds and was able to start eating again. And then with Harrison, since we knew it was coming, he got an NG tube, which is a nasal gastrum. It goes up your nose, basically into your stomach. So he got that first while we waited for his G-tube surgery. And we kind of taught ourselves everything, really. When they sent us home with a kid with a G-tube, they take you to this class that has a baby doll. And they're like, here's how you put the G-tube in. Here's how you take it out. And here's how you feed them. And that's it. You're good. You can go home. And you're like, now that knowing what I know now, I'm like, let me please teach that class because you guys suck at this. We had to learn how to vent. We had to learn, which means pulling air out of their stomach. There was all kinds of learning curves. There's still learning curves. We had to learn how to suction them, which at first was really gross. But now it's kind of satisfying. Like, I'll be gross for a second, like popping his head. It's kind of like, yes, I got it. Oh, there it is. So it's it's kind of amazing how okay I am with gross stuff these days. But
Wow.
it's been really just one thing after another, just kind of as soon as we adapt, something else happens. So what can you do?
What can you do? Exactly. And you said like you had to go to these classes, like venting classes, and just all of like you had to learn so much to adapt to your child's disorder and like their lifestyle. Do they have physical and occupational therapy, or are you kind of more focused on keeping them comfortable just like at home and just more of the basic needs? Are you trying to like keep that physical aspect where they can like sit like lay properly, or are you just like letting them be comfortable?
It's a mix between letting them be comfortable and range of motion. They are, but that wasn't really our choice. We live in a smaller town. We live about an hour north of Nashville, Tennessee. There's only about 30,000 people in our town, and so we don't have pediatric physical therapists or pediatric occupational therapists. So we have orders for that, but we don't have the ability to get the kids to that. So we just do range of motion several times a day. And I'm kind of obsessed with positioning. I got a gym mat, and when the kids would make a weird sound, or like when you're snoring or something, like you can kind of tell the body position that's causing that sound. So I would lay myself down on the mat and pretend I couldn't move and see what parts of my body that I would have moved if I could. Like I would wish that my hips would be tilted a little bit. My shoulders were rolled back. I
Right.
wish there was something behind my neck. So like I taught myself positioning on myself so that I could make sure that my kids were comfortable. So so there's a lot of stuff that we just taught ourselves, basically.
Wow. And like teaching yourself with INAD, did you have to do research on your own besides what the doctors told you? Did you have to like research, like find other people who have the condition, like what they do? Or was it just more like you and the doctor, since it's so rare, kind of just were together, like trying to figure out what to do, next steps, how to keep your kids comfortable and how to treat them properly?
Actually, some of each of those things. INET is genetic, so we didn't know that, but my cousin, my brother, my dad's brother's daughter had INAD. She died when she was 13 in the 80s, so I was like 4. Um, and so we knew that it was in the family, and it actually is something I asked the doctors about, and they rolled it out with an MRI and saying, oh, there's no iron in the brain, so they don't have INAD, so it's okay. And then 2 years later to tell me that they actually do have INAD was devastating. But he was a chiropractor, and so he would put on his lab coat and he would sneak into college libraries and hospital libraries to do research for his daughter. So he gave me all of his research, all of his, here's the supplements for muscle spasm, here's this for brain function, here's this for nerve function. And then there's also a doctor who's supposed to be the expert that I called and said, so since there's iron accumulation in the brain, we found out that Riley was anemic. And I said, I don't know what I should do. They want to put her on iron pills. But obviously, if there's iron accumulation in the brain, I don't want that to make it worse. And they said, oh, no, it should be fine. It should be fine. Go ahead and give the iron pills. Well, I didn't. And 2 months later, they called me back and said, oh my gosh, stop the iron pills. And I'm like, I never gave them to her. So some of it was just my gut. Some of it was working with Vanderbilt Hospital is fantastic. We've built a really great team. So some of it was just us guessing, like as far as medications, the kids had tremors, like from Parkinson's. So there's no pediatric dose for the Parkinson's medication they're on. So we just kind of like played with the dosage. And we kind of have to do that with a lot of the medications that they're on. So it's a mixture of a family member, myself doing a lot of research, the medical team that we have just kind of guessing, and we have medical experts that are doing research on their own in this disease.
Wow, wow. I know from personal experience, like we've also had to do a lot of research on our end just because my condition, it's so rare. But that's like he put on the lab coat and he went to go do his own research. That's unbelievable how much of your own research you actually have to do. Because I know for me, my whole family had to get genetic testing to see if they were carriers. And it was really, it's kind of an ironic story where I'm not very skilled in science. I was a film major in college. So, like, science is not my thing. So, trying to explain the genetics, I always mess it up. But basically, both my parents, I believe, are carriers for the disease I have, which is really crazy because they grew up like a mile down the street from each other, like, went to different schools, everything. And the doctor said they had a better chance of winning like $1 billion lottery than having a kid like me. And then my siblings had to get tested. I don't remember off the top of my head if I'm a carrier. My sister's a carrier. My brother isn't a carrier, but my sister just got married last month. So if her and her husband, I almost said boyfriend, her husband, if they want to have kids together, he has to get tested to see if he has the gene, if they'll pass it down. So I think like even as people who don't have medical degrees, I don't have a medical degree, my mom doesn't have a medical degree. I think doing our own research is a lot of it. And do you think a lot of the care that your children receive and a lot of like outside of the hospital, just your day to day, do you think like your parental instincts kick in with the care of your children of, oh, like even though I should do this, I know my children better, or like maybe let's do this instead of that kind of ordeal?
All the time. Yeah. It sounds kind of wonky, but when they were smaller, and we didn't have nurses yet, they had their own rooms, and they were both crying all the time. There was always something wrong, like they never wanted to sleep at night. I would go into Riley's room and I would get heartburn. I would leave Riley's room, go into Harrison's room, and my heartburn would be gone, but I would feel gas pains. So I would give gas meds to Harrison. I would give Riley a Tums, and the feeling would go away for me, and their crying also went away. So someone told me I was a body empath, but I'm like, I think I'm just really tuned into my kids, because I can still tell if they're about to be sick or if they're uncomfortable, just by the way they hold their lips, which is, I just know my kids. But I also was able to know them. They haven't always been this disabled. So I was able to get to know them and their facial expressions and their preferences before they started to decline. So that is also a major helping point as far as making them comfortable.
Wow, definitely. I know for me personally, my mom's the same way. She kind of she understands. She like, when I'm sick, she understands, like, oh, like the nurses and doctors, they know your condition, but like as a mother, like I know you the best. And you mentioned that you had nurses. I know for me personally, I was a 5, 6 times, 7 time a year hospital visitor for up to a week to 10 days growing up. Do you feel like with your nurses, I'm not sure if you've had the same nurse or you have a rotation of nurses, and even at the hospital and at home, do you feel like you have a connection with them beyond just like checking their vitals, making sure they're okay? Do you kind of have more of a connection with them because you've been with them for so long, or you just spend so much time with them?
Harrison's nurse has been with us for over 2 years now, and she had, he was still interactive and still vocal and still um, smiling a lot and laughing when she started. So she was able to fall in love with him. And then last year he had septic shock, so he lost a lot of his ability to react and smile. But she proposed to him last year with a ring pop, and he smiled and said yes. And I always ask him, do you love your nurse? And he'll smile or he'll vocalize. They have a very, very big connection. Her name is Hope. And so I have a lot
Oh,
of shirts made for him that have a play on that, where I'm like, hope is the best medicine, or everybody needs hope, or there's always hope, kind of stuff like that. And then Riley's nurse, she left for nursing school, but she was here for a year and she was fantastic. Always did her nails, and her hair was always, I mean, I can't do that. I'm like, I could do a ponytail, maybe I can braid it. Like, okay. But her hair always looked fantastic. And she called her boo. And we really miss her. But yeah, there's a connection with the nurses. Although right now we have openings for 4 nurses, 2 night nurses and 2 day nurses, but we only have 1 day nurse, and that's it. And she's actually, so that's Harrison's nurse, is caring for Riley and Harrison right now. Thank goodness, so I can get stuff done. But they're more like family.
And I think that's just so great when you have those people to support you. Obviously, people have like their communities, their families, loved ones, and friends. But I think having nurses who can support you emotionally, but also like take care of your loved ones is just the best feeling. I know for me, like, obviously, by the time I was 5, I was like accustomed to the hospital. But I know that at least when I was going to the hospital and like I was really sick, at least I had nurses there who knew me. And if they poked an IV, I understood like they're just doing their job rather than some nurse that comes in, doesn't introduce herself and just pokes the IV. So that's just great. And I think especially with someone like in circumstances like yours, having somebody there from outside helping you, you can get stuff done. You can get your to-do list done. That's just great. And speaking of community, transitioning to TikTok, I know you have over 1 million followers on TikTok.
I know, isn't that crazy?
How did that come to be? Do you just like, what is that like having 1 million followers? Do you feel pressure? Do you kind of just do your own thing? Like what's like the feeling behind it?
It doesn't feel real. I'm like, there's really 1.2 million people that follow me, that think that this is, something to, I don't know. People are like, you're TikTok famous. And I'm like, I don't really like to use that word. I don't know. It's a great feeling though, because we have this huge community behind us. So many people love my kids, and it does make me feel less alone, because I've got my parents, they live 3 doors down, but they don't really help out medically. They help out financially, and they also help out like if, oh crap, I forgot to go to, the pharmacy to pick up meds, my parents will drop everything and go pick stuff up. But TikTok is just, it's been a huge blessing. And it's, I guess I do feel a little bit of pressure, because I'm like, well, I mean, I'm still me, but now that I have all these followers, I kind of feel like there's some content that I shouldn't show just because I'm getting banned a lot. So I call the medications drugs. And so if I say drugs in a live, they ban my live. So I'm like, so now some of the stuff that my shorthand stuff that I say, I'm like, I have to change some of the stuff that I say. I have to change some of the way that I act just because of that. But other than that, no, I really am just, just me still.
That it's refreshing to hear that you like are just you, because I feel like a lot of people on TikTok in general, just like outside of the medical community, they'll get like 100,000 followers and they'll be like, I'm hot shit, But
Mm-hmm.
that's so great to hear that you're just telling your story. And I think TikTok, like, I love the app, but I also am like, if I post something and say the wrong word, it's like they're gonna ban you. Like you say drugs, or like you say something that like they just take out of context. I think it's crazy that creators like you, and like I know a few other creators in the app, are getting banned and they're not even doing anything wrong. So that just blows my mind. And what do you think the biggest blessing with your following? I don't know if you're one of those creators. I know some creators on TikTok, they have like PO boxes where like they like if they have kids, they'll receive gifts. Are you more of the just educating people? You're not really on the side of having a PO box. Like what do you think the biggest blessing with your following is?
Well, there's 2. The biggest blessing is it's kind of like therapy for me. It's kind of an outlet. But we have a wish list on Amazon, and we haven't had to buy baby food or bone broth or peanut butter powder. Some of their medications, people are buying diapers, wipes, and that's been the biggest blessing, just because of the financial burden of what we need for the kids daily. Like I can't even express how thankful I am for that, because it's taken a lot off of our shoulders.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I think the kindness of people on the internet it's just fantastic. And I'm so glad that you're able to have that, because we've been talking and just everything that you've been through and having two kids, it must feel so good just to be able to have at least a little burden lifted off and just have food for your kids or just without having to worry. So I'm so happy that you have a community and that people are for your wish list. That's just great. And on the flip side of that, what do you think? I watch your videos all the time, and I know with all of the good, there are a few rotten apples among the crowd. How do
Yeah.
you approach negative comments? I know you do it in a very specific way and you don't let it get under, I'm sure off camera you let it get under your skin, but how do you go
No.
about people who just either want to play doctor or try to tell you how to take care of your kids or just straight up nasty? How do you deal with that?
Um, Straight up nasty comments are actually my favorite, just because they can be kind of like a punching bag, a little bit of an outlet for me to be kind of like, bitchy,
Yeah,
sarcastic. So I'm like, like being able to um, come back at them. I think it's funny, but because I'm like, you don't live this life. You have no idea what you're talking about. You're just a troll trying. Here's the attention you wanted. Um, but as far as people who say like the kids have Munchausen by proxy, um, or that I'm drugging them to keep them this way, those they only bother me a little bit, just because some people agree with it, and I'm like, ugh. But for the majority of it, it really just brings more people together, because more people are like, no, leave her alone. So that's really great. But none of it really bothers me. I really just find it more humorous than anything.
definitely. I remember I made this whole video series back in January, kind of like peak quarantine, where we all like were getting back to our normal lives, but COVID was just kind of rampant still. And I made this video explaining my condition, and I got DMs and comments, and people were not accusing me, but people were labeling me as a product of incest, saying my parents were related, and they were just giving me all this negative backlash. And I was like, I was bewildered. I was like, oh my God, like these people like are actually trying to like play TikTok doctor. Like they're really just trying to, at first it got under my skin. And then I was like, okay, like I could be funny about this. Like, and it's not funny, but it's also, I'm like, really like trying to play TikTok doctor. Come on. So I made this one big video and I got like 1 million views. I made it at like midnight in my bathroom. I think I got up to get a drink of water and I saw this video on TikTok. So I stitched it. And that's how everything transpired. And that's how I got started with the podcast. But going off of that, like just like nasty comments, I saw on your page, and I've seen this a lot, you use dark humor because I also
Yeah.
use dark humor. So it's kind of reassuring to have someone who's in a circle, like with rare disease in a similar circumstance that uses dark humor to cope. So can you like explain like what, like walk me through that, like your dark humor of like everything, just about life in general and just like the condition and stuff?
Well, I guess I've always had dark humor. My mom is a colonel in the Marine Corps. So she was one of the first females that was integrated. So when they did co-ed boot camp, she was one of the first females that did that. So she was kind of like, she had to be, hardcore in order to hang with the guys. So she had, gallows humor. And so I guess I kind of got it from her and her sarcasm. And then my dad is an engineer. So um, engineer jokes they don't have a personality, but my dad really does have one. He's hilarious, but he's got a dry humor. So I just kind of grew up making jokes like that already. So then when we got the kids diagnosis, I was crushed for about a year. And then I started to kind of try and find the good in it. And then when stuff would go bad, I would just make jokes about it instead of like going back into a depression. So like this is really terrible, but now my oldest is 16. Natalie has my humor. And someone asked us on a live, what is your favorite vegetable? And Natalie said Harrison. So it was I
God.
was like, oh my God, no.
Oh my God.
So
God.
that's
Oh
because we
my,
get a lot of people saying that. A lot of people call them vegetables. And I'm like, no, I mean, their bodies don't work, but they're still in there.
yeah.
Riley would, rather kill you than, just let you,
Yeah.
do your thing. But I'm just, I don't know. It just sort of has always been there. So that's the dark humor is just, I grew up that way and it just is, it's just a fun way to cope. And then
Yeah.
the sarcasm comes in too, like where you were talking about people making diagnoses over the internet. It's like, wow, you can see a 30-second video and make a diagnosis when it took doctors 20 years to like see
Yeah.
my diagnosis.
Yeah.
You're really freaking good. Wow, you should be a freaking doctor. Like, it's
Yeah.
just, I don't know. When I think of, just really ridiculous things, I'm like, I just make fun of it instead of let it get to me, I guess.
Oh my God. I'm still laughing about the whole vegetable thing. Obviously,
Yeah,
like
isn't it
to the
terrible?
to the normal person, it's like, oh my God. But like to you and I who have had circumstances, like obviously you're in a very different position than I am, but it's still like, oh my God. I remember I was at a party at college and my condition affects my liver. So like all the toxins that go to my liver, my body doesn't process. So like fatty foods, like McDonald's, Burger King, whatever, the fat builds up in my liver and it doesn't like rejuvenate and it doesn't clean
So
my
you can't
liver.
drink either?
I just have to be very limited about it. So anyway, it
Okay,
was like the night
good.
before graduation and like I was having a good time. I was like, college is over. Like this year's been so crappy. Let's, and then somebody was like, can you drink that much? And it wasn't a terrible lot. Like I know my limits, but I said, it's okay. Like I have to get a liver transplant anyway. I guess tonight's just accelerating it. And everybody at the room looked at me and I was like, guys, like it's fine. I was like, it's fine. It's a coping mechanism. And everybody just like was like, I was like, you can laugh. Like, it's okay to laugh. Like, it's fine. So I can drink. I just am very, very, very picky of when I choose. Like, if I go out with my friends, I'll have a simple drink. I won't go bananas. And I really just like watch my diet and watch what I drink so I can maintain that balance of, oh, like, let's not make myself sick. And it also affects my stomach. I also have underlying conditions that go along with it. But I think dark humor is such a good way to cope. Obviously, it's not for everybody. Sometimes I'll make jokes and my mom will be like, really? Like, really? She'll be like, speaking of
Yeah.
parents, you said your mom was a colonel in the Marine Corps. Do you think, not only being a grandparent, but do you think your mother turns the colonel, like colonel mode off when she's around Riley and Harrison? Do you think she goes full grandma, or do you think there's like a balance between?
Oh yeah, she's full grandma. She she left, well, she left most of her Marine Corps at work when she would come home as a mom. Except for one time we were coming in and out. I think I was 12. And we were coming in and out of the house with the neighborhood kids. And she was just like, go in or out. And we got an attitude with her. And she got mad at us for leaving popsicle sticks on the counter. And she picked up a
Oh,
popsicle stick and said, I am trained to kill you with this popsicle stick 27 different ways. And we were like, oh gosh. So the rest of the summer, when she would say, do you want a popsicle? We were like, no, no, we're okay, thanks. Um, so she did sometimes marine out on us, but she would leave most of it at work. So as a grandma, she's Nana. She's like fun loving, get in the floor, play with them, love on them, Nana. So
yeah.
yeah, she can definitely leave that at home.
I think that's so interesting how the modes just can go on and off like a switch. And like the same thing, like I'm in a similar position where I was so sick growing up that my mom's parents were so involved, like with my care and stuff. They weren't necessarily medically hands on. My grandma worked at a doctor's office. She thought she was a doctor, but just because she worked there for so long. But they used to come and sit with me in the hospital, whatever. They used to like order me food to the hospital if I wanted to eat. And they just like when I was sick, they used to drop things off. So I think having grandparents and like a support system like that is just, it's such a blessing. And I think like, I don't know, I just personally like it's so refreshing to hear that like Riley and Harrison have grandparents that are involved and that are like a part of their lives, because I know half the stuff that my parents went through with like my genetic testing, my hospital stays, my care, like my grandparents were always the first people there. So having grandparents and just the support system in general is just so important.
It really is. And my husband's parents, even though they live in North Carolina, they're involved. They're going to come in a couple of weeks for Riley's birthday. Her birthday's Halloween. And my mother-in-law is bringing birthday cake. My sister's going to be here in, I think, 2 weeks. My sister is a nurse, a cardiac nurse in North Carolina, and she's here maybe every month, every other month. She's here a lot. She FaceTimes the kids. If I had to pick one person that was the most involved, it would be my sister. Um, my sister's voice, my kids recognize over the phone. Riley will react to her just voice. And so when I'm like going live and I see my sisters in my live, I'll say, Minnie's in here, and Riley will vocalize. So it's, I'm very blessed to have such a big support system for sure.
Oh, definitely. That's great. And you mentioned Halloween and birthdays. Do you go all out for like the birthdays and Halloween, like costumes to the nine, birthday parties, like out of this world?
We do for Riley. Harrison doesn't like a lot of chaos or a lot of noise, so we just do like a small family birthday for him. But for Riley, we invite a lot of people, and we go all out for her birthdays. And this year, the theme is have a killer birthday. I'm Freddy Krueger. My husband Jason is going to be Jason. Natalie is Michael Myers. Riley is Pennywise, and Harrison's going to be a skeleton.
That is so fun and so creative. Oh my God. I love that.
And then Gunner's going to be a bat, and Moose is going to be a spider.
That is so fun. Oh my God. Oh, I love Halloween. Oh my
Me too.
God. And you said so you have another daughter, Natalie. How has it been with them using, like, being like able-bodied? I'm not sure if they have other medical conditions, but how
No.
has this been with just like growing up with Riley and Harrison and having just to adapt to them, but also live their normal life?
Well, right now, Natalie has a few friends over. I can hear them in Natalie's room just laughing. So I've tried to give Natalie as normal as life as possible, but I know that my time being split between them and the kids is hard on Natalie. So Natalie is in therapy, grief counseling, just to be on the safe side. And we're actually really close. We do a lot of stuff together, like almost everything together, really. So I know everything about Natalie's life, and Natalie knows that they can come to me to talk to me about anything. And I know there's some resentment, but Natalie's acknowledged that it's not from me or the kids. It's just not getting equal amounts of time.
I can imagine how hard it is. I know my siblings, they had to go to therapy when I was sick. So it's definitely being the sibling of someone who has this type of disease and who has extenuating circumstances, and their life is no easy task. And I think as much as it affects the person going through it, the parents, it affects the loved ones too, especially siblings. I think standing by and as a parent, having to focus on your children who need your care, but also focusing on the ones who might not necessarily need the medical care, but who need the emotional support. So I appreciate you being honest and transparent about that, because I think siblings, especially in these types of situations, don't get enough recognition.
Well, I also think that siblings in this kind of situation are put into caregiver positions, and I don't find that fair.
Mm-mm.
Natalie wanted to learn how to do everything for the kids, how to catheterize them, how to give them their nebulizer, how to make their medications. I don't make Natalie do anything. If Natalie wants to help, then I let them help, but I don't ever put Natalie in a position to have care of Natalie's siblings, because they'd never forgive themselves if something happened to one of the kids. So um, I I think that other parents should reevaluate that if they are using the older sibling or the, healthy siblings as caregivers, they need to be kids too. They don't need to be caregivers. They don't need to be put in that position.
Definitely. And I think there's a lot of pressure, especially like as you get older and like parents get older and like siblings start to grow into that role. I definitely think there's a fine line between, oh, like I can help out here, than being pinned as the primary caregiver. Because I think as much as we want to help our siblings, and luckily enough, my parents have had my condition under control where my siblings didn't need to step in. My sister didn't need to take my blood sugar, or didn't need to help me with my inhalers, or didn't need like things like that. So I think that there's definitely a fine line. And just going off of like reflection and what like you've learned and how you've navigated life, what do you think like the biggest message you would have to people who aren't in our worlds, who aren't having to deal with this day to day? What would your message be to them?
Um, actually, I'd have a few. The first one would be thankful that you don't live in this world, that you don't have to deal with this, that you don't have to know what we have to know. But the second thing is to be grateful for your life and just know that there are other people that would trade places with you in a heartbeat. No matter what you have going on, that's something that has gotten me through. Is I know that yes, my children are terminally ill, and yes, I've got to do every basic human need they rely on me for. But my kids are home with me, and I know that there are people whose children are in the hospital who would trade places with me in a heartbeat. So I guess count your blessings, like I try to just see the good. So try to see the silver lining, try to see the good, try to focus on the positive, because you can be sad later. Your kids deserve a happy life if they're medically fragile or not. Try to give your kids the best life possible.
Definitely. I think this just being in this type of situation, it really makes you think what you should be grateful for, what you are grateful for. Obviously, this has taken me a long time to learn, but like the materialistic things used to be so important. But now, as I don't want to say my health's declined, but as I've grown more into my skin and learned more about my medical conditions, I've realized the things that are important, and that the things that matter, and having my health and being able to go out having my colitis act up or having an asthma attack. So I second that and I sounded that. So that is great. And a lot of people don't understand what it's like to live in our world. Obviously, you and I live in different worlds within the same world, but different realms of this world, where yours is more hands-on care and mine's more just the same world. Because even though we're not facing the same challenges, we're still in this world of rare disease and being a part of this community. And I think because it is rare disease, I feel like a lot of people who have rare diseases and who are willing to talk about it are hard to come by, and who are willing to have this kind of conversation. And I think TikTok has brought out a lot of those people, because I feel like if I wasn't on it, I wouldn't have met half the people I've come across, and half the people who I've learned from, and half the people whose stories I've seen. So I definitely think it's a reminder that even though we live in different realms of this world, the rare disease community, no matter what walk of life you're going through, is still the same world.
It is. And I really hope that my TikTok helps demystify that for other people. And I've tried to create a safe space for people to ask the hard questions. Those are my favorite, because they're never going to get an answer from somebody else. The questions that are heartbreaking or seem a little cruel are the ones that are probably the ones that are on most people's minds, like, end of life care, kind of stuff like that. DNRs, people want to know about that, but they're afraid to ask about it. So I'm glad that I've got somewhere to give this information to people. I think it helps bring awareness to our rare community.
Definitely. And have you met other creators through this app? through this app, either with Inet or who also have rare diseases, like just through messaging or through comments or through reaching out? Like, have you met, like, built a community or met anybody else?
Yes, I've met a few people. I've found a few people and led them. I found a few people with children that had INAD, and I led them to our support group. We have an INAD Facebook support group. So I've been able to bring other people together as well. And I've met a few moms in person. So yeah, it's brought a lot of people together.
That's just wonderful. Having community is so important. And I think that's like the big message that we've talked about today to bring home is have a community, have people around you who love you and support you, no matter what the challenges are. And on a brighter note, can you drop your socials, your Instagram, your TikTok, anything you want to drop?
Um, Everything's Dub Frost, either Dub_Frost or just Dub Frost. My website is dubfrost.com. And from there, you can see all of my social media. So I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on YouTube. I tried Twitter for a while, but I was like, this really isn't for me. And then my daughter made me get a Twitch and Discord or something like that. So that's on there too. I have a
Oh,
couple. So
social media is a slippery slope, but thank you for sharing. And before we leave, before we end the recording, I would just like to get a quick picture just for the socials, and I'm going to message you all of this too. So whenever you're
sure.
ready. Wonderful. So I'm going to stop the recording. And before I stop the recording, thank you so much for coming on, Whitney. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I've really enjoyed talking about different things and just having an open conversation. So thank you for sharing your story. You can follow Whitney on their social medias, and I am looking forward to connecting with you in the future.